The walls are closing in around Electronic Arts, a company that's become far too dependent on loot boxes for its own good. There's just plenty of government regulation that's taking place. Belgium and Netherlands enacted their own stuff, saying that loot boxes are gambling and have to follow their gambling laws. The US has been drafting a bill that's gained bipartisan support. The UK's been speaking out a lot about regulating loot boxes, and now we are seeing lawsuits taking place in France and Ireland having their say on why they believe games like FIFA 20, they're just gambling essentially, because they're filled with these loot boxes that act exactly like gambling would, at least from a psychological standpoint. So let's first take a look at what's going on in France. The following information was relayed by news outlet Sport Bible. The headline of this article reads, FIFA 20 publisher EA hit with lawsuit over Ultimate Team being classed as gambling. Now, this isn't a countrywide thing. It's a pair of lawyers who have taken it upon themselves to sue the company for predatory practices. So it reads right here, according to French newspaper L'Equipe, Parisian lawyers Karim Morand Lahouazi and Victor Zaguri, probably butcher that, are taking on the FIFA 20 publisher over the potential risks posed with Ultimate Team. The two lawyers have argued that it is essentially a play-to-win mode, I think they meant pay-to-win, which requires players to gamble their money on packs and not guaranteeing returns on a particular card. Here's a quote from Zaguri, who said, "In this game, everyone wants to have a dream team to go as far as possible. And it isn't just an aesthetics thing. Players like Lionel Messi will have higher stats than other players. They give you tangible gameplay advantages. So it goes beyond just, wanting your favorite player. It's also about actually staying up to date and being able to stay competitive with everyone else. And that's just not possible with FIFA. If you're not shelling out thousands of dollars opening up a bunch of packs, then you're just going to fall behind." And then this reads, "My client spent 600 euros in 5 months without ever getting a big player. The developers of this game mode have created an illusionary and particularly addictive system." So these two lawyers do represent a client who felt that FIFA 20 preyed upon them. Zaguri then added, "The more you pay, the more you have the possibility of getting big players. We believe that a gambling game has been integrated into this video game because buying packs is nothing more than a bet. It is the logic of a casino that has entered their homes." Yeah, that's straight up what this is. While companies like EA will tout that, well, it's not exactly like poker or slot machines. The basic psychological principles are pretty much the same. They affect people psychologically in the same way that casino games do, especially with real money being involved. So loot boxes absolutely have to be treated and regulated as if it were gambling, or at the very least, it's a serious issue that has to be looked at, researched, and then systems have to be set to protect customers and to ensure that people know what they're getting into with these games, that kids especially aren't engaging with this stuff because it's just not healthy and can cause a lot of financial issues, as we have seen in multiple articles in the past about how kids, without knowing, spent hundreds, thousands of dollars, emptied out parents' bank accounts because parents bought a game like FIFA not knowing, with the E for Everyone or PEGI 3 label, that it's something where kids can just spend a bunch of money. To that effect, here's what Zaguri said. "Today, an 11 or 12-year-old teenager can, without any restriction, play FIFA Ultimate Team and commit money because there is no parental control system in this mode." And in response to this, a lot of game companies or games organizations like, the ESA and the like, they've said, well, you've got platform-wide parental controls that you can set up, but those are not advertised really, so a lot of parents don't know that even exists. And just the fact that a game labeled E for Everyone requires parental regulation at all is pretty damn egregious and pretty nonsensical. Games that require parental regulation should be rated higher, obviously, as more mature games, given the ability to engage in these financial transactions that kids should not be engaging in. And then on a game level, FIFA does not warn about the possibility of loot boxes financially affecting people negatively. They don't have prompts saying, hey, be sure to set up parental controls, or hey, here's a way to set up spending limits, or hey, just be careful, loot boxes can cause X, Y, and Z to happen. There's just no warning, unlike with cigarettes where it tells you like there are health risks. Alcohol, that you know there are health risks because that's readily advertised. With video games, that's just not the case. And then the article added, the French newspaper reports that the two lawyers are hoping to receive insight into the algorithm which generates the distribution of player cards in packs. Yeah, that's one thing. Game companies keep algorithms and the way they dole out the loot box rewards pretty close to their chest. They don't really disclose how that stuff works, although duos occasionally give out vague percentages like the rarest players have a less than 1% chance of being rewarded, except less than 1% could mean 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 1,000,000. So, you just don't know how impossible it is to earn a player like Lionel Messi. But a lot of players hold out this compulsive hope that if they keep spending one day, they'll eventually get Lionel Messi. But more often than not, that's just a distant dream for a lot of people. It reads right here, Mamado, who is a 32-year-old chauffeur, told L'Equipe that he splashed out 600 euros on FIFA Ultimate Team packs since the release of FIFA 20 last September, and he revealed that the best card he pulled from any pack was Napoli defender Kostas Manolas, who is rated 85 in Ultimate Team. And then he added, you quickly become addicted to this game. Whenever I buy a pack, I tell myself that this is the last time, but I always do it again. You get so frustrated when you don't get good enough players that you buy again and again. I didn't even know him. Put so much money in just to get Manolas. People I know have put in 2,000 euros or 3,000 euros. It's crazy. The amount I have spent has made me fall behind on my rent payments. And this is the point where some people will say things like, well, this guy's just irresponsible. How can he prioritize a game over paying rent? Just keep in mind, though, that these addictive, compulsive behaviors, it's just not something that people can control that easily. That's why it's called a compulsion. It's a psychological element. It's the way some of these people's brains are wired, and it's these specific people that games like FIFA target. Fighting addiction and compulsive behavior is not as simple as just turning off a switch. Some people just cannot help themselves because of the chemicals that are released in their brain when they open loot boxes, because of the way these loot boxes are designed to visually and auditorily sort of excite people with anticipation when they open these packs. That obsession will drive them to prioritize the game over paying rent or basic human needs, and they just won't know how badly it's affecting them in the moment until they take a step back and look at how much they've actually spent over the span of months. So yeah, it's just not as simple as be more responsible. Otherwise, we wouldn't need laws for gambling, for alcohol, for cigarettes. If it were that easy to just flip that switch, there are consumer protection laws in place because there are certain people that can be preyed upon. And so that is why government regulation is so important, given that game companies are not willing to act responsibly because they care more about quarterly quotas and investors being happy than the health of customers. The article then concludes by talking about what happened in Netherlands, where they imposed a ban on some loot boxes, and more recently, NHS Mental Health Director Claire Murdoch talked about how no company should be setting up kids for addiction by teaching them to gamble on the content of these loot boxes. This was a pretty recent quote from the UK, and this is a sentiment that so many people are agreeing upon. We have heard the same thing being said by researchers, government bodies, and the like, from testimonials from players who have experienced the addiction of loot boxes. Everyone's saying the same thing. Loot boxes are gambling. They need to be regulated as such. And the response we're getting from companies like EA and organizations like the ESA is, well, we disagree. The law hasn't caught up, so we can get away with it. That's sort of their excuse, is the law allows for this rather than it's morally correct to do this. Or they'll claim, that the surprise mechanics are fun and totally ethical, but they really have no backing for such claims, especially when all of this new evidence continues to be presented. And this lawsuit right here goes to show that it's not just kids who are affected by loot boxes. A 32-year-old in this article cites how they've fallen prey to loot box addiction. It's something that can happen to both kids and adults alike. Now, is this lawsuit actually going to go anywhere? That's hard to say. EA likely has an army of lawyers to counter lawsuits like this, and I don't know if French laws are up to date enough for EA to be legally liable for the implementation of loot boxes in games like FIFA, but the sentiment is appreciated, in my opinion. I think the lawyers are absolutely correct in what they're saying. And then right here we have an article from Irish news outlet The Journal, where the Fianna Fáil party of that nation has talked about how they intend to regulate loot boxes. It reads right here, video game loot box gambling must be tackled, according to Fianna Fáil, who said today that it entices children into gambling. And right here, this article presents quotes from Justice spokesperson Jim O'Callaghan. So on the topic of loot boxes, here's what O'Callaghan had to say. Gambling has become a serious problem that is destroying lives in Ireland. Children are being lured into gambling through online video games that use loot boxes. There are many games out there like Fortnite that attract children to play on the basis that at the end of their obstacle course or at the end of their game, there will be a loot box there and some piece of money available for them. O'Callaghan continued, I think we have to be conscious that if we are going to allow children to be influenced by the prospect that if they excel at something, there is going to be a pot of money for them, it entices them into the long term into gambling. The article then continues to talk about how Fortnite's Save the World game mode does in fact contain loot boxes, and people who engage in the Battle Royale may also end up engaging with the Save the World mode given the popularity of the game now, so, you know, they're still preying on teenagers. And then to finish things off, O'Callaghan said this: we try and protect them as a state. We try to protect them from tobacco. We try and protect them from alcohol. And similarly, we should try and protect them from the dangers posed by gambling. The article also paraphrased O'Callaghan here towards the end by saying, O'Callaghan said dealing with the gambling industry is a priority for Fianna Fáil and pledged that with his party in government, a regulator would be set up by the end of this year. EA, it's time to face the music. The more you continue to resist this, the more the government regulators are going to encroach, the worse you're going to end up looking, the more repercussions you're going to face, and the more you're just going to face plant. Especially financially, I mean, you've put so many of your eggs in the loot box basket that if loot boxes were to go away, I mean, a game like FIFA would really just suffer from a revenue standpoint. And it feels like EA is just looking short-term right now. It's just they're trying to cash in as much as possible before the regulations come in. I cannot wait for the day the regulations begin to roll out across the board worldwide when it becomes more widely acknowledged that loot boxes are an issue that have to be looked at closely, that need oversight. And hell, I'm not even just talking about EA strictly here. I'm talking about any game company that relies on loot boxes in both mobile games and AAA entries. There's going to be a day of reckoning as you keep pushing and pushing the envelope. Eventually, you know, something's going to snap. The bubble's going to burst. So either stop with the shady business practices now, or eventually you'll have to say hello to the government as they kick the doors down. More and more countries are jumping on board. We're hearing more and more countries express their dissent against loot boxes. More and more research is being done, and the conclusion largely seems to be one and the same. Anyway, there you have it, folks. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on the lawsuit from the French lawyers and what the political party here, what Jim O'Callaghan from Ireland had to say about this whole situation and his intent to tackle loot boxes as if it were gambling and putting the proper regulations in place. Drop a comment below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.